So Jeff, thanks for joining Write with Impact.
Thanks for inviting me.
I'd like to talk to you today about my favorite topic, which is writing. And then I'd like to talk to you about another topic that is very hot, something that you've been writing about, you've been podcasting about, you've been producing videos, a lot of very interesting content. I've been following it very closely around generative AI, not just ChatGPT, but just broadly generative AI and the impact on writing and content creation, for lack of a better word. But before we get started, you're a very, very interesting guy. I've known you for, I don't know how long now, maybe almost 10 years now.
Probably, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeff.
Well, business-wise, I basically wear two hats, which are related. Is I do sort of advisory consulting type work in digital strategy. And then the other hat is I write about digital strategy and books and podcasts and keynotes and all of that. So it's sort of, pretty common approach, consulting services plus, the whole, let's call it thought leader / influencer game. That's kind of what I do professionally. Personally, I'm pretty nomadic. I spend a lot of time on the ground in China, based home in Bangkok, which is spectacular today, by the way. But a lot of traveling, a lot of time in Europe, a lot of time in Brazil. Ironically, not that much time in the US, which is where I'm from, which is strange. It's the one market I don't pay much attention to as my own.
Well, China's reopened, so you're going back to China?
Back on the ground almost every week, flying in and flying out. And yep, which is great. It's a lot. If you do digital strategy, I mean, it is just a hotbed of activity. There's so much going on. It's like flying into Silicon Valley every week. There's so much happening that it's really kind of fun.
Great. Well, I'm a big fan of your podcast and your videos and your writing. So there's a lot to learn. I learn a lot from you about all of that. Something that I recommend my listeners tune into. So tune into Jeff Towson. But today I'd like to talk about writing, of course, and it's something that you've done a lot of, and you've been incredibly successful. You're a prolific blogger, prolific writer, with a formidable following on social media. So just first of all, a little existential question: why? Why do you write?
Yeah, that's a good question, because people tend to focus on sort of outcomes a little bit, like, oh, make money, oh, get a following. Oh, I think people underestimate there's sort of an innate desire in a lot of people to think and create and maybe to have a voice. It's almost like a creative, and there's a lot of satisfaction just in creating something. I mean, people paint and nobody ever sees them and they never make any money, but they get a lot of satisfaction. Now, if nobody sees it, okay, that's a little frustrating. But I think there is a creative instinct. For me, I do strategy, I do thinking. So I don't paint or anything like that, but I get tremendous satisfaction out of figuring something out and writing a book. And really, that feels like progress to me. Now, if nobody reads it, okay, that's not quite so much. But, that money aspect is maybe third on the list. I think a lot of people have that. And fortunately, we're living in a time, which we'll talk about AI a bit. Anybody can do it now. If you want to be a painter, you can be a painter. You want to be a pop song composer? I can write pop songs in 10 minutes and just using AI. So anyone can create almost anything now, which is really frustrating for those people that spent decades learning to paint, and now we're all doing it. But in terms of the creative instinct, that's phenomenal.
Right. But how do you write? I mean, just take us a little, into your studio, your multiple studios. I know you sort of live all around the world. Anytime I reach out to you on email or LinkedIn, you're somewhere exotic and interesting. And I'm here in boring Taipei. But just tell us a little bit about your process. How do you do it?
I mean, there's a little bit of what your goal is. And in my mind, I break them into influencer versus thought leader. If you want to be an influencer, if you want to have traffic, if you want to, have a social media presence, attention, all that, it's a different game a little bit. I mean, you might be looking for whatever's trending this morning, come up with a contrarian take, do a 30-second video and hit, right? that's one extreme. If you're selling shoes, that's the game you play. If you're on the thought leader side, you're trying to create a body of thinking about a subject that matters to you and hopefully others, otherwise you don't get very far. That's the game I try to play. So based on that, I have a question I focus on, which is sort of digital strategy. How do you win as a digital business? How do you win? How do you lose? Competitive advantage, Warren Buffett type thinking meets digital. So that's kind of my area. Now, for that, if you're playing the thought leader game, it's much more of, instead of just jumping around day to day on trends, you're sort of doing a long march or a marathon or whatever you do. So you're going to create a lot of thinking over time that's going to accumulate. And it's like, wow, you want to know about, I don't know, architecture. That person over there has written 200 articles on Japanese architecture. And, you know, that's how you sort of, if there's an accumulation that happens, right? And that's what I do. So every week, with that as the goal, my standard is every week I write 2 to 3 articles, which are about 2,000 words each. I do one podcast, which is not an interview. It's usually 40 minutes to an hour of me. It's a lecture. So that's 3 pieces of content per week. That's the core foundation that I'm building. And I just stick on it. So, you know, in the last, and then once you get the content, you can do stuff with it. So I'll give you like in an example is like in the last year, I've written 110 articles. I've recorded 52 podcasts. I've created 2 MBA courses, and I've published 6 books. That's 1 year. Now it sounds like a lot, but if you just stick with it every week, it just kind of naturally accumulates. And then if you go online and you Google digital strategy Asia, there'll be this massive list of my stuff that comes up because I've been flooding this area for a good, I don't know, 7 years, something like that. So I'm running a marathon basically. And I sort of have to stick on my weekly schedule.
How do you get started? I mean, I think there's the, you know, this writer's block, or as they used to call it, I think they call it blank page syndrome, whatever you want to call it. Do you ever suffer from that? Do you ever have a hard time getting started with the blank page or blank screen? You know, and then do you outline, you know, how do you incorporate research? You know, how do you write? And then in terms of editing, are you you know, just a massive rewriter? You just, you know, spit something out and rewrite it 10 times or 20 times like I do?
I'm mostly, I don't know if I have I keep a list of articles sort of on a to-do list. And I spend a lot of time reading annual reports. So that naturally, you know, if I read Amazon's annual report, that'll take me about 4 to 5 hours to get through it and model it out. Well, that's article right there. So that's, or I meet with various digital companies around the world, China, Southeast Asia, a lot of Brazil. That all naturally leads itself. But generally, I have a list of articles I'm sort of working on. And then my sort of body of work, it's kind of a pretentious term. Let's call it body of thinking. That's all frameworks. So I can apply frameworks to various questions and I'm going to get it taken apart pretty quick. So there's certain things compound, like there's a, you know, the old saying that like savings may accumulate interest, but you know, if you have an interest rate, you can compound wealth. If you stick on the same question for a long time, your knowledge starts to compound. You start making connections naturally. I don't really have a problem with coming up with ideas. I have, I don't know, 15 of them on a list I still can't get to. And sitting next to my desk here, I have a stack of papers. I can actually show you. Like, here's my little stack I'm working on. See that pile of papers on the bottom row? That's probably, I don't know, 35 sets of notes on companies. They're each probably about 20 pages long. I'm still trying to work through that list. So that doesn't seem to be my problem. As for writing, I generally set myself a time frame, you know, do it in a certain amount of time, set it aside. I don't really worry about the copy editing and stuff that much. I make mistakes in there. I have punctuation stuff. People who read me don't really care about that stuff. Now I'm using GPT to clean up my writing and function as a copy editor, but I don't really do that much of that. I probably should do more.
Right. So you've also published a lot of, you said you published 6 books last year. That's enormous, but you've also published several other
Small
books.
books. They're
Right.
short. Yeah.
Yeah. Tell us about that process. Why, what do you mean by small, and why small? And, what's your process for writing and publishing those?
About 30,000 words. So what someone can read in an hour in English is usually about 30,000 words. That's just me pulling together ideas and trying to distill it down. Um, I'm not totally sure there's huge value in that. I think it's reasonable, but that's, I don't know how many articles I have, probably 600, 700. That's me sort of trying to pull together a framework. Um, so the value to that is probably mostly for me. Now I'll come up with something a little more readable. I think books are still valuable. I think articles and podcasts are probably better. But I put that sort of third on the list if you're going to do long form content, not short videos, not quick videos, long form deep thinking. All I know is books, podcasts, and long articles. That's the only way I know to do that. Anything else, 500-word articles, you can't say much in 800 words. So that's kind of my go-to. But books, I'm a little bit on the edge about.
Does it bring in, speaking engagements and consulting work?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't think it comes from books very much. I mean, they sell. They're not huge, but they sell every day. It pops up, and for certain people, what I do find is every now and then there's a certain percentage of people, let's say 10%, who follow me, who are really sort of maniacal about the same subject. Other people might find it interesting or useful, but there's 10% who are kind of maniacal. I'm kind of maniacal. Those people love the books. They buy all 6 of them. This is a series, and they read them in one shot. So for a certain percentage of people, like that tends to be valuable. For a lot of people, some people just like listening when they're on the treadmill. Other people like the articles, but they don't like the podcasts as much. So there's a bit of a spectrum of how people learn. I think books are in there. What I do like about books is you can do a lot of graphics. And I think visually that's helpful. So my books have a lot of graphics in them now, photos and graphics and things like that. Yeah,
Right.
those are sort of my 3 go-to mechanisms. But
I heard on one of your podcast episodes, you were talking about maybe building. Tell me if I'm wrong, if my recollection is incorrect, but I thought you were planning on building a large language model using all of your content so that you can make it searchable, sort of Ask Jeff on your website.
that's what I mean, the whole AI thing, the generative AI thing, there's a lot of tools. I'm incorporating those as much as I can. I literally have a list of about 20 of them I'm playing with right now. But those are productivity measures and things like that. But then there's bigger moves. And there's probably 2 big moves I'm working on, which may or may not work out. One of them is that one, which is I have, my website is basically a big library. And it's literally got a tab that's called Company Library and another tab that's called Concept Library. And if you open them up, there's just network effects, economies of scale, all the main concepts. And then you go to the other one, there's companies from all over the world I've written about. So there's a big accumulated library. Well, that's very amenable to creating some sort of chat GPT like interface just on my content. And so I've been talking with some companies about how to do that. I'd like to put like a little interface right at the top of my website where instead of searching for a library, you can just start asking questions. That seems very doable. You either have to build it yourself, which doesn't look like it's very difficult, actually, or you do some sort of API, which ChatGPT is rolling out right now with Microsoft or something like that. That would I think that would be a really cool way to sort of bring all that together. I've been transcribing all my websites, all my podcasts recently, to put them into a format that's easy to read for an AI. Yeah, maybe we'll see if it works.
Do you outline or even script your podcast, or do you just riff?
No, I don't usually riff. I do it like my standard joke is that professors are natural podcasters because it's very normal for us to talk for, a standard MBA course or an executive MBA course is 3 hours. And you'll do projects, but you're probably talking for 2 hours of that. So standing up and talking for 2 hours, I've been doing that forever. So it's kind of the same thing. I pretty much do it like a lecture. Um, it is tempting to do interviews because if you interviews, it's actually more interesting for people. Like it's more dynamic. People, Joe Rogan stuff. People like interviews. It's a very good format. I've never really done that. I probably should have, but I kind of like doing the lecture thing, even though it's not as, it's probably not as compelling content. But yeah, I do it basically like lectures.
I disagree with you. I think I like interviews. This podcast has always been an interview, but I like your format. It's not just your format. I like sort of monologue or lecture style podcasts a lot. And I can't always, I like to listen to conversations and interviews, but I like to vary it. And then I'll switch off and switch to you or another sort of monologue style podcast. I think it's great.
Yeah, I've tried it once or twice and it doesn't work because I'm trying to create a body of thinking. And in an interview, things go where they go,
Right.
right? And it doesn't naturally, if I'm building blocks, block A, B, C, D, and now I'm putting block D, which ties to A and B, it all links together. So
I
I
see.
just found it too difficult to sort of keep building what I'm building if, you know, because it can go a lot of places with an interview.
Right. I'm going to want to move to generative AI and ChatGPT. But before we do that, what would be your three pieces of advice to thought leaders out there who are, maybe they're very experienced and they published a lot, but they want to hear how your advice for maybe stepping up the game in terms of quality, depth, and maybe even frequency and channel, all that kind of good stuff. Three pieces of free advice from Jeff Towson.
Yeah, I mean, you have to sort of put it in your brain. Are you investigating a subject, like almost like a scientist? Or are you sort of on the influencer thing where the audience is, how important is that? Um, I'm heavily weighted on sort of like building out my own thinking and frameworks, right? Hence, I do articles, podcasts, long form content. Um, I'm not convinced that's the best approach, to tell you the truth. If I was starting over today, I would be looking for the right question to focus on, which is usually you want to get there first. So generative AI right now, who knows what. And I would probably be focused on short video with a lot of text on the screen. If you want to convey a lot of information quickly in a very dynamic form, I think TikTok, short videos with lots of text is about the best mechanism of communicating ideas and information. I probably would start there, but I'm so invested in the other side. I'm doing that now, which I wasn't doing before. That's probably where I'd start. I'd be making 5-minute, highly impactful videos with lots of text and content baked in. I think that may be where this is all going to end up, and I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a question here, like, I have to do the writing and the podcasting because it's the only way I know how to think. I was raised as reading books and writing. My brain works that way. It's not necessarily the greatest way to convey information. Like you could argue Joe Rogan is an example. It's like the anti-Gutenberg Bible approach. It's for people who don't read, and there's a whole lot of people who learn better by listening than reading. So they love podcasts. Well, there might be a newer version of that, which is the best way to communicate any ideas is short video with text. That might be where this all ends up. And I'm not quite sure how I work to that. But if I was starting out, I'd probably start there and see what happens.
With short video and lots of text?
Yep. That's probably, I would start with that format as a way to create all of my content, as opposed to doing what I'm doing, which is doing a lot of writing and stuff, and then cutting it up and slapping it over there. I don't know. I think about that a lot. I think it's a more powerful form of content.
Video?
Yeah.
Why?
Short video with text. I think it just conveys more information. It's far more interesting to watch. I think that's where we're going to end up, but you know, I kind of do what I do. I cut up my stuff and I'm making short videos now, but I'm cutting up my current process to get there.
Right. But you have been producing short videos for many years now, actually. It's not new for you.
Oh, I'm doing a lot more now. Like, yeah, I'm using AI where I'm kind of doing it automatically now, which I wasn't doing a couple of months ago. Yeah, I put up, I don't know how many videos this week. 1, 2, 7 videos this week, maybe.
Okay, that's a lot. What would be one other piece of advice for a thought leader or someone just sort of thinking through their own approach to writing and publishing content?
Get away from being a solo person. You got to have a team. It's a natural for a lot of people like myself. It's very natural to do it yourself, and you got to stop that. You'll get far further with a team. Now, the nice quirk on that is it doesn't have to be a team of humans anymore. You can build a team of digital agents, which is what I've been doing. That works just as well. So this might be the the introvert solopreneur type person may end up having a team of digital agents instead of people. So, but yeah, you got to get away from the one person operating on their own. You can't get that far that way.
And why is that? I mean, in terms of obviously the obvious, explanation would be just in terms of sheer leverage and the ability to just publish more frequently. But what is it? Why are you such a strong advocate for this? And it's very persuasive, but just tell us a little more.
Well, I mean, one, you're going to be far more productive. Two, there's a lot of value in getting back and forth with people. Hey, that sucked. Hey, that was good. You get a lot of feedback. It sort of keeps the energy. If you're operating on your own, I mean, I do a lot of the writing on my own. It comes and goes where my energy level's good and then there's not. But if you're on a team, you kind of keep each other at the same level. It's just a better way to operate across the board. But yeah, there's a natural instinct for a lot of people. People who like to write often very much like to live in their own heads. So you got to kind of fight against that, I think.
Got it. You've mentioned generative AI several times. There are a couple things that let's just go into it now. One thing you just mentioned is you're building a suite of AI tools that are helping you sort of create a virtual team that will help you, or AI powered team. Let's talk about that. And the other thing is around your view on using ChatGPT and other AI tools to help you with writing.
Yeah, this is yeah, I think you have to get into this all the way. I mean, I literally try new AI tools every single day now. It's just on my to-do list every day. And I've mapped out my standard process, and it's a spreadsheet. And on every step, I now have AI tools I'm trying for every step to see if it changes and what works and what doesn't. But in the center of that, there's coming up with the topic, there's doing the outline, and there's doing the writing. I don't use AI for any of that very specifically. I don't allow myself to use AI for the core writing, coming up with the topic, doing the outline, doing the writing. My standard take on that is the question people ask is, how fast is AI getting good at things? Well, very fast. The other question is, how bad are human beings getting at things? Because our skills degrade very quickly if we don't use them. If you're using AI for driving your car skills go down quickly. Most people can't add and subtract anymore. If you don't speak a certain language, you lose your skills in that language. We degrade in our skills very quickly. The problem is, I don't know the difference between writing and thinking. I don't know how to think in depth about a subject without writing. I can think in my head at a certain level, but to really flesh it out, I need to write a book or I need to write an. Well, if I stop doing that, I think my thinking will degrade very quickly. So I don't allow myself to use any AI tools for the core stuff. Now, outside of that, yeah, I've got like, I don't know, 10 to 15 of them I'm using pretty actively, another 5 to 10 I'm playing with. But yeah, I've sort of restricted myself.
Okay, that's very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. That's very, very powerful. What kind of tools are you using and how are they helping if you're not using them now for, topic generation, outlining and writing? Because I would imagine some people, maybe a lot of people are out there are using it, and you've just you just shared what you think about it and the threat to your own skill development, that you're saying your skills in anything, but in particular, maybe thinking, right? And writing skills could go downhill if you rely or over rely on AI.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you what I'm doing. I have a little list.
Yeah.
Identifying trending topics, um, keywords, things like that that match up against my content. I use Agent GPT for that, which is, I basically tell it, it scans all of my writing on my webpage, and then it scans whatever's trending, and it comes up with, this is a good topic for you or a good area to write about. I usually give it a prompt like, I'm going to write about Microsoft. So I use Agent GPT for that, which is outstanding. Idea generation, nope. Outlining, nope. Writing, nope. Chat GPT is good for hunting up specific information. Not unlike a search engine. Fact checking, counter arguments, find mistakes in my thinking. Having it as almost like a very aggressive, hostile editor or a debate partner. GPT is pretty good about that. So you've written your article, tell me I'm wrong. Find 3 things I've gotten wrong. Five mistakes. That's pretty useful. Copy editing, obviously GPT. Creating images and graphics. I used to use things like Upwork. I used to hire people or I'd do things. Now I just use like Midjourney or any stable diffusion type stuff. Headline improvement, stuff like that. Agent GPT is quite good. Making videos now, I use something called Opus Clip, which is, you basically, I'll do a video just on my phone. I used to have a camera. Now I just use my phone. And, just put it on Opus Clip and they'll cut it up into 5 to 10 TikTok videos with text on it. And it does an okay job. It's not awesome, but I can usually get 2 to 3, 30 to 60-second clips with all the text and everything done pretty quick. My videos, I think, have been getting a lot better. But if you look at them, like, I'm usually in an office talking. It's not a real office. It's a fake image that was created. So playing with that stuff, some of it's useful, some of it's not. 11 Labs, which is converting, voice to text and such, that's pretty helpful. Yeah, so probably the area I'm most interested in is digital marketing tools, video tools, and then copy editing and sort of debate partner tools. That's probably what I'm focused most on. And a lot of this stuff doesn't work that well. Some of it does. It's where I am. We'll see it. But this is just the last couple of weeks. Who knows?
Generative AI is moving really, really fast. You're looking at this very, very closely. I am too, to the extent that I can keep up with it. It's happening very, very fast. Jobs. What are going to be the impact on? Let's just start small, quote small, on writing jobs. You're on your latest podcast. You talked about the Hollywood writers' strike. What's going to happen to writers and editors?
Yeah, I mean, it's devastating. I mean, it is. There's no way around it. Creative writing is going to get hit harder because there's no right or wrong answer. Write me a script, write me a scene. There's no right or wrong answer. So AI can create lots of them, and then you pick the 1 out of 10 you like. It's different if you're writing something more technical. What is the right answer to this question? Well, then you can be right and you can be wrong. Well, okay, so that's a higher bar. Yeah, it's pretty devastating. I think I would assume everyone's going to get disrupted. Part of what I'm doing is I'm making it very personal. I mean, where are you going to retreat to? If everyone can generate articles and there's just a sea of content now, like the amount of supply is going to go through the roof. It's all going to sound pretty good. The only way you're going to be able to differentiate is if you're a better thinker about something and it's highly personal. So there's a reason I'm doing video. If you watch any of my videos, the first thing on there is my face is on all of them, right? I'm personalizing my content to me. Because just writing a good couple pages about a subject, well, ChatGPT can do that. Anyone can do that, right? So it's now, you could argue some will be better than others, but yeah, I'm trying to differentiate as hard as I can to a personal brand or a consulting group, one of those two. Yep, it's going to be brutal. And I think people are looking for a silver lining. This is like talking to people who farmed for a living in 1910. And they say, all these farming equipment going to be a problem? Yeah. All these jobs are going away. I would assume that's what's going to happen here. It may not, but that's my baseline assumption. You know, it used to be what, 20, 30% of the US population used to do farming. Now it's 1%. It could be like that. Who knows? Even if you don't think the jobs are going to go away, even if they don't go away, the supply of people who can do it is going to be so high that the fees are going to come way down. It's like photographers have a hard time charging because everybody can pull out their camera and make pretty good photos now. So even if, you know, the pure number of people joining will drive the prices way down. So if it's a business that's dependent on revenue by writing, I would be very wary. I would do something like I'm doing, which is we make our money in consulting and services, and then we do a lot of writing, and they go together quite nicely. But standalone content businesses, it's going to get hard. Well, it's already hard. It's going to get a lot harder. And I don't even think it's just for writing. I think it's people who make pop songs. I think they're in trouble. I think rappers are in trouble. I think painters are in trouble. I think Hollywood isn't. I think anyone who's creating content as a standalone business should be hitting the panic button. Now, if you have another business like consulting or services or law firm or whatever, and you do content, that's going to work out quite nicely. But yeah, I wouldn't say I'm bearish, but yeah, I would be hitting the panic button.
One more question, Jeff, if I may. You have taught at Peking University for several years, or you did in the past, and you would take a contingent of students, your students, all the way to Omaha, Nebraska. I hope I'm getting that right, to see Warren Buffett at his annual shareholders meeting. Tell us what was it like meeting Warren Buffett? I think you met him more than once, and you spent quite a bit of time dining with him and speaking with him. Tell us what that experience is like, because
Yeah.
obviously I'm an admirer of him, as are a lot of other people.
Yeah, that was kind of a little bit of a fluke. He's very hard to meet, right? People pay a huge amount of money. The only group that he would meet with would be students. Now they've stopped that as well. He got to a certain age and his office says, we're not doing this anymore. But so at least for a couple of years, and you know, students would meet with him, and I was sort of taking a group out there. I was more of a chaperone than anything else. And that was pretty awesome. But then it turns out he really is interested in China. So he would give a talk, and then he would come and sit with the China group. So, I mean, it was just completely not random, but it was, you know, you're sitting there and you're listening to him, then he comes over and he sits next to you. And I sat next to him, I don't know, a couple hours, couple times, just chatting about everything. And complete fluke, you know, but it makes me feel good every time these people write these big checks to have lunch with him. And I'm like, I had lunch with him. I didn't pay anything. And he didn't want to talk to me. I mean, we talked a lot, but he wanted to talk to the students, right? Which is, he's a good dude. Really, he is. Yeah, it's pretty, it's both fun and not fun. The fun part is he's super smart. And he's smarter than you think he is. Even though everyone thinks he's smart, he's smarter than that. And it comes across really quickly. You chat with him and he keeps saying things that just kind of like, what? So like, example, like a student would say, oh, you know, you bought this stock in 1969. You know, why did you blah, blah, blah? And I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says, oh, no, I started buying it in November of 1969 for like $22, but we kept buying up through March of 1970 up until $34. And it's like, how in the world do you remember that? And he keeps doing that. Oh, you know, we met Bill Gates. It was on a Tuesday. We went to this restaurant. It was in March 1990. He keeps saying stuff like this. And you're like, people don't remember stuff like that. Like, that's not, so he's much smart. And if you talk to his managers, they say the same thing. Like, it's spooky how he can do this. So yeah, he's really smart, but he's a super nice guy. And he was chatting with the students a lot, and you know, yeah, it's really pretty stunning. And now, you know, now he's 90 plus years old. This was several years ago. So we're probably in the last couple of years of Warren Buffett, unfortunately. Well, although Charlie Munger's 98, 99 now. So I think that was a lot of, you know, I was incredibly fortunate to actually get to spend some time with this guy, because we're not going to have him for that much longer, unfortunately. Yeah, but I don't know how to top that. Like, people are like, someone asked me, like, you going to Omaha this year? I was like, not really. I'm like, because it's never going to be as good. Like, there's no way I could ever be as good. Yeah, I think I'm done. But yeah, it's yeah, it was pretty. He's a pretty great guy. He really is a good man, like at his core. So he spent hours talking to the students, like hours, answering anything about his wife, about his kids, everything. Pretty nice.
That's a great story. Jeff, thank you so much. Before I let you go, just, you know, what's the best way for people to find you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter a little bit, although I'm kind of just getting into fights, which is not smart. Most of my content goes up on Twitter or LinkedIn, or you can go over to jefftowson.com. That's where I post everything. That's kind of my repository. Yeah, and then for consulting stuff, it's at techmoatconsulting.com.
Fantastic. Now, Jeff, thanks a lot. It's been great knowing you for the past decade, and you know, I see you're not stopping, you're not slowing down anytime soon, and you picked up right on this generative AI trend, and you're just picking it apart and helping me understand, make sense of it. So, thank you for doing that. And yeah, thanks a lot, and good luck with everything. And talk to you some other time.
All right, thanks a lot.